Hello everyone, my name is Moonrain and welcome to my channel. I do want to apologize for my absence. I'm still recovering from some recent health flare-ups, and a few weeks ago I thought I was on the mend, but I'm still kind of dealing with some lingering symptoms. So thank you so much for your patience. Today I'm responding to a VR from Sapling Tarot. I really enjoy her channel. Her videos have kind of like this stream of consciousness delivery, but they're really thoughtful, full of really good insights, which I really find refreshing. Her content really works for both like beginners as well as like seasoned professionals. So I'll start with the very first question, which is about how I started collecting decks. All right, so the first question is asking how long I've been collecting decks. Well, I didn't initially start out collecting decks at all. A couple of decades ago, my father gifted me a Thoth deck, as well as a Goddess deck by, I believe it was Doreen Virtue. And for a really long time, those were the only two decks that I owned. I didn't realize at the time that the questions that I wanted answered didn't necessarily like align kind of like with the objective of the Goddess deck by Doreen. Like I would ask a more of a predictive question or something to that effect, and I felt a little lost in regards in how to discern the answer from the card itself. I started working more with the Thoth deck instead, and I felt like I understood the symbols a little bit more. There's a lot of like Egyptian symbols, and at least to me, like things about human anatomy that I could really apply to my questions. And I thought it was a little bit easier for me to answer the questions that I had at hand. And I think once my dad bought me those decks, it kind of gave me more of like a green light later on to try different types of decks, because I wasn't sure if at the time if my family would be okay for me to use those type of divinatory decks. And since then, my collection started to slowly increase. But the several decks that I bought for myself were at the time like Lenormand, Kipper, Sibylla, Gypsy decks as well. Even then, it wasn't really intentional collecting. It wasn't until a few years ago where like I started watching TarotTube and started seeing people displaying their decks. And that's where I started buying different decks and seeing how well it connected with what I was trying to read. And that's when my collection got a lot bigger. But I didn't become more deliberate about my collection until maybe like, I think 5 years ago, where I started making sure it's more curated in what I or how I want to actually read and what role each deck plays in my practice. All right, let's move on to question number 2. All right, so for the second question, what kind of collection do I have? It's very much a systems-based type of collection. That's just how my brain works. I organize everything by function. If I were to break it down strictly to like tarot versus oracle or other, it would be 25% tarot and the rest 75 or even greater is the other. But that breakdown doesn't really reflect how I think of my collection. I actually organize them into like 4 different categories, where I have like the prognostication decks, like their own system, astrology, archetypal decks, and my support decks. So in regards to prognostication decks, they're kind of like self-contained decks that I feel can answer most questions for me and for my clients. I would put the Doors of Semblance by Anna Cortez in that category. That would be my Lenormand decks, my Kipper decks here, my Sibylla decks. And I really want to make a video distinguishing those type of decks. It would also include my tarot, because I feel like that is also a great prognostication tool. I can use this as a system, but I typically use this more as a horary astrology type of deck, and that would be my Oracle of the Radiant Sun. The Book of Doors is a great self-contained system, and I really thoroughly love the Glowwood. I cannot emphasize how well I love that particular deck. So that would be the prognostication decks that I do have, or the types that I have. When it comes to astrology, I feel like those are also very self-contained, but I could also use them to specify, like just be a little bit more specific with other types of readings, especially because of the houses. So if I don't necessarily, if I want to zone in on a particular like tarot reading where maybe my client is asking for something generalized, and if I were to put this first, I can tell exactly what type of reading it may be. So if I were to get the second house, I would know that it's more in regards to maybe finances or something of that case. If I'm reading something in regards to love and I get a specific house, then I understand exactly the dynamic there, whether it's about communication or things of that nature. So, and then of course the archetypal, my definition is a little bit more stretched than the typical definition here, but it's basically bringing nuance into a reading. And of course, my support decks, which focuses more on the emotional landscape of a situation. And I would consider the Oracle of Nightmares as one of them, perhaps Poesis, or maybe the Reclaim deck. So this system is very similar to how I work with astrology. I tend to use, just for one question alone, I use the Chinese Bazi, the Vedic astrology, and Arabic astrology, because I feel like they all have their strengths. So it helps me answer questions about like the why, the what, and the when of a single question, because I don't necessarily do astrology for just understanding like personality or characteristics of a person. I like to answer questions in regards to that. And but I think my favorite system for astrology that I feel is very specific, and I don't need any other type of astrology that could help answer a question, and that would be the horary system. But if I want to get a general information about somebody and their likelihood of success in something, then I would use the other three systems of astrology. Sorry, I'm rambling about something else. Okay, let's move into the next question. That would be question number 3. Oh, before I go, if you guys are I just put this randomly, but it's definitely giving a cohesive reading here. But this is in regards to, like, this is you, like the main woman here. This is from the Kipper deck. And as you can see here, this is about some sort of passion project that necessarily hasn't really moved forward. As you can see here, we have inertia. I'm sorry, I had to read this because like when I saw this, as I was talking, I'm like, oh my God, it's really giving a reading here. Like, and then we have here isolation. So it feels like you might have like a passion projects with somebody that you necessarily didn't come to fruition or completion here. And then we have here Ra and Genutsu, which to me shows that there's a need for a separation between you and that other person in order for things to complete. Here we have the Maybug from the Glowwood Tarot, and the Maybug is a bug that needs a lot of resources to move forward. And gets very tired very quickly. And it's really funny that it's above the inertia. Like I feel like this is kind of like the advice column as opposed to like what the situation is here. So here the situation is you have some sort of passion project, something that you've been wanting to work on, maybe a hobby, maybe at work, but it never really came to completion or fruition. It looks like somebody kind of was lagging behind in regards to this. And this is like advising you to separate in order for this to complete. This is showing that this is going to take some time. You feel overworked, burnt out. Typically this gives you 2 different timelines of 2 to 3 years if I'm not mistaken, and then a longer timeline, I'm not sure, but I remember it being in decades where the final more drastic change would happen during that time. So sorry guys, but I really wanted to give this message in case somebody wanted to figure out what this all meant. But it's not that I wanted to make this a reading at all, it just came up that way. Actually, why don't I do my reading of what I did for the year, just to show you like how I use the different types of decks that and make a more cohesive type of reading here. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to show sorry guys, my yearly spread is because I just wanted to show my progression of like how I used to read and how I read now, and how I integrate my different tarot decks and oracle decks into one particular reading. So initially when I started doing a yearly spread to kind of figure out like how my year was going to go, and I would lay out 12 tarot decks into a 12 cards in a die-like fashion in order to determine like the overall like energy or what's going to happen in regards to that month. And so now because of the amount of decks I have and the different roles that they provide, I have created a different type of system. So in regards to a spread for the year, I typically do 2 separate spreads. And the first spread would be what is something that I'm going to look forward to this month, or I mean, sorry, for the year, and what is something that I will have that's going to be a challenge, right? Something that's going to create some sort of friction, something that I'm going to have to learn from, that will be coming in the new year. And the first thing I do is start out with astrology. I pick out all of the houses cards, and the reason I do that is to determine where in my life that's going to happen. Is it at work? Is it in my love life? Is it family life? Is it in regards to my home? And the tarot deck in this case, I would separate just the minors, and that would give me the timing. And you could also, of course, use the illustration on that particular card that you get in order to give you a little bit more information, because I I would love to just use it for both the timing as well as the illustration itself. And the Lenormand can be used in order to give you more of a practical, no-nonsense type of information in regards to what is going on in that life aspect, what is going on at work. That's going to be a blessing, right? So this is answering where, this is answering when, this is answering what. Now, you can use the what with tea leaf, if you have tea leaf cards, or any type of prognostication deck, as well as the tarot. Now, you could also include these, but they're not necessary. And that would be the a numerology deck to kind of get like the overall energy of what's going on, and also a deck that has keywords. I specifically, I didn't use it this time, at least because I got this deck after the New Year's, but you could use this deck in order to determine like how are you going to react to this particular event, like during and after, or just one card in general, like what was your reaction to that particular event. Now that would be the very first spread. The second spread is exactly the same, but of course it would be like, what is my challenge for the year? Now, so I'll give you an example here. Let's see. Okay, sorry guys, I had to remove all of the majors and court system out of the deck in order to read the decans for the dates. So let's start. Now we're gonna pick, we're gonna do the first spread. So this would be the blessing. This would be like what's something that I look forward to this year, right? So this is gonna give us where in that that would occur, like in what life aspect. So we'll pick a house now. Okay, so this would be house 2. So this would be about physical security, possessions, material value, and self-worth. I usually use this as my finance card, so maybe in regards to money. Now, I know that my life sector, this is about my finances, right? So now I'm going to ask the tarot where. Or I'm sorry, not where, but when. And you could use a reference table in order to determine like I'm doing. I just have a little cheat sheet to help me with that. Okay, so when is this going to happen? When is this blessing going to occur? Okay, and so we have the 3 of Cups, and that would be, let's see here. My cheat sheet says in July, so this would occur in July. And now, like I mentioned before, you can use the Lenormand or the tea leaf. And this will give us more about the situation. So this is the where, when, and then this is the what. What's going to happen? So what's going to happen in regards to my finances in July? The first week of July. Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. Oh, sorry guys. Oh, my tarot. They're gonna burn. Okay. Oh, this tea leaf oracle is just unwieldy, isn't it? Okay. You wanted to stay here, you'll stay here. Okay. So I'm gonna use this just because. Why not? Okay. So to me, it looks like from the Lenormand deck, it's going to be stability. I'm going to assume this is more in regards to maybe just like a career, something that's very stable, that's going to bring in income. You're going to move towards something that not only is it stable, but something that you really love and enjoy. And you can see that from the tarot deck here with the 3 of Cups, something that brings enjoyment. And that is what's going to bring in financial success here in somewhere, or at least a flow of money in July. The first week of July, the 2 to 11th. Now, if I were to bring in the tea leaf to just kind of bring in more information, this is bell, which is an announcement, and here increasing your efforts if you want to achieve your goals. So here we're seeing, right, that hunkering down, like I mentioned with the anchor, and that's what's going to bring in that influx of money. But this is something that you're moving towards, something that you really love and enjoy, and maybe a sense of community that's going to help you get there, which will bring in that influx of money. So really positive reading. And I mentioned before, we can always bring in numerology, just kind of like to figure out like how is this overall energy here? You can always do this. So we have here the 7, and 7 is about like analysis, inner search, and where you have some sort of like obstacle that you have to overcome internally in order to move forward and progress. However, it's upside down, so this is something that it'll ease up as you move forward and really take initiative with the boot here. So now let's talk about like some sort of negativity, or not negativity, I'm sorry, something that may not go so easily, some sort of challenge that you may have in the upcoming year. So we're going to do the same exact thing. So here we have, we'll use, where is my astrology? Oh, put it up here. It's below the tea leaves. Okay. So where in my life is there going to be some sort of challenge, some sort of friction, roadblock that I may have to be a little bit aware of in the upcoming year? And this will give me the where. So this is about me, house 1. So this is about my self-image, right? And then we're going to move on to the tarot. And the tarot will tell us when this will occur. When will this challenge occur, right? So this challenge will occur, and we have the 8 of Cups. So the 8 of Cups will be in February. So this is during this time. It's from 19th to the 28th. And I am filming this on the 27th, so until tomorrow. Okay, not so bad, right? Let's move on to the Lenormand to explain to us what is going on. This is more of an internal versus external type of situation, right? So this is like internalized struggle. So in this case, I might even want to go with archetypal decks, even use the Reclaim Oracle to just see where the basis of all of this is coming from. So this will give you just a good rundown, the practical aspect of this question. So maybe we can ask, like, what's is going to happen, right? So what's going to happen that's going to lead to the struggle? Okay. Of course, you wanted to come out. Okay. So with the Lenormand, Kipper, and Sibylla, typically the signifier is you, especially if you're a female and you resonate with that gender. Then we have here the coffin, which is like endings, and then we have here, which is your tree. The tree, as I mentioned before, has several meanings. It could be about health, it could be about your ancestors, it could be about your family, it could be about settling roots. So here we see something in regards to maybe health, so about yourself. It could be also about your health, or just like not feeling like you're feeling grounded in this case. Now we can bring in the Reclaim Oracle, and we can talk about feelings regarding this particular event. Okay, and we have the word resilience here. Let's bring in numerology. I wonder if I have an archetype deck to play with here nearby. Wonder where my deck is. Okay. So the 9 is close to completion, right? It's also about release and compassion. So it's like forming that end of the cycle. So here we see a phase where maybe like there's an ending to, or feeling like you're unable to complete something. And here we have that 9 in reverse, that sense of not being able to be completing a cycle. However, if you look at the the Reclaim Oracle, we have a sense of like pushing through, moving forward, even though you don't feel 100% whole, right? So I feel that's what's really resonating with the 9 in reverse, as well as the coffin here in the Lenormand. So it's like that sense of needing that sense of completion. Even we see that resonating here with the 8 of Cups here, but pushing forward, even though something is missing. We see that part here in the leg, as well here in that cup that's missing here in the pile. We're still moving forward, we're still pushing through, we're still going towards the right. And the right is always referred to as the future when you're reading Lenormand, especially when you have the person looking towards that area. So that's where the direction is. Had this person been looking towards the left and opposing the direction of the signifier, this would be a looking back, right? Seeing what's missing, or feeling unfulfilled, as opposed to this person not feeling complete but still moving forward. So I think this is more in the sense of saying, please make sure to find a sense of integration, taking the time to feel that sense of grounding, sense of wholeness before moving forward, as opposed to burning yourself out and not feeling complete and grounded and pushing yourself to move forward. So that is in regards to the obstacles that you will have this month or the end of this month. Okay, so that is kind of where I'm at in regards to my practice and how I integrate different decks, and really I'm hoping that I'm using each deck and how they're meant to be read, right? Like they're objective and really hearing their voices. All right, and we'll move on to the next question. So the next question is, are you a completionist? Nope, I don't think so, though I probably was at the beginning. I used to want a full series from a specific artist, whether it was like Kim Krantz or Mr. Eats. But I feel like now I'm much more interested in whether a deck fills like a missing role in my system that I currently work with. So question 4 is, how do you store and organize your collection? I organize my decks by function in an Excel sheet. I don't count my learning decks as part of my active collection, but physically I store my decks on a desk and on 2 shelves on my wall. But realistically though, they end up everywhere because I live in a really small apartment and I read anywhere and everywhere. So I have decks in my purse, I have them on the coffee table, basically everywhere, which is probably really annoying to everyone else. All right, let's move on to the next question. So question 5 asks, what's your favorite thing about your collection? I think my favorite thing is that it feels very specific to me and my needs. It's tailored to how I read, and I genuinely feel like I'm at a good place now. Aside from tarot, the rest of the decks are very distinct and each has like a really specific role in my practice. Oh, I don't know if you guys have the Omens of the East, but if you look at the Instagram, the author mentions how like the eyes, the ones that have the flutter, talk about timing. So that's really interesting if you get these cards in your spread. Sorry, that was a side note. So I feel it may take a while before I'm comfortable enough to whittle it down to just my perfect number of decks. And I've said this many times, but I've always wanted to just have no more than 10. I think like in ideal settings, it would probably just be like 2. However, yeah, that's never gonna happen. All right, let's move on to question number 6. So question 6 asks, what's your least favorite thing or something to improve? The sheer amount of decks I have. I have at least 50 decks, and honestly, I don't feel like I even have the bandwidth to work with more than 10. What makes it really difficult is that I really love different systems. So aside from tarot, I work with, like I mentioned before, like Lenormand, Kipper, Sibylla, these fortune cards from Endora, and they function on their own without needing support decks, and I just love that diversity and being able to use that. So it's going to be really hard for me to whittle down, as I mentioned before. So what's my biggest category in my collection? If I go by how I divide my cards, it would have to be prognostication. So that would include fortune style decks like this I Ching here called the Tao Oracle, Sibylla, Gypsy, Kipper, Lenormand, and of course I include tarot in that particular type of sorry, in that category. For tarot, I don't have a lot of RWS. I make sure to have like different types of tarot decks, like the Marseille, the Minchiati. So I just want a lot of diversity in different systems, and that's what I really crave for. And the reason why I feel like prognostication is my biggest category is because I like to understand the situation, where it's headed, and what to do about it. Like that, those are my 3 big questions that I do when I answer a client's question. For the smallest category, which is question 8, I would have to go with my emotional support decks. So these are the decks that focuses on like the keywords here, and speak about like emotional states. And I mainly use this to kind of validate what the querent or client is feeling, especially when they're like kind of struggling in order to articulate exactly their position or fully understand their emotional response to a specific question. I use this more of like the very bottom of the deck, or I mean the spread, and then move on to the situation and possible advice and possible future. All right, so question number 9 is, do you have a Holy Grail deck? Not in the sense of like rarity or price. If anything comes close, it's my antiquarian Lenormand deck. It's the deck I use the most by far. It has a ton of signifiers, and I wanted to lay these out for you. To represent different people, and a lot of them are really recognizable faces like Tesla and Einstein and Curie and Frida Kahlo, Frederick Douglass, and much more. And I edged them myself, but you could see it's long gone because I use them so often, and did such a terrible job. Like there's some Sharpies on some of these cards here, but yeah, like you could see here on the dog. But I really, really love this deck. It's been with me through thick and thin, and I use this deck on a daily basis. I really enjoy the Lenormand system, but from an aesthetic standpoint, I would have to go with Terra Volatile, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm gonna have to break this. Let's see. So I'm playing a game with it, so it's separated. There we go. So if you haven't seen this deck, I'm gonna just flip through it just a little, so you can see just how incredibly gorgeous that is. Look at that, so beautiful, isn't it? Just beautiful deck, and it has an extra suit if you haven't heard about this deck. I feel like this deck really ticks all the boxes for me, and it's one of the ones that I had to wait quite some time in order to obtain. Just very regal. Look at that Queen of Coins. A close second would be the deck by Benabel Wen, which is the Revelations edition tarot deck, as well as the Tarocchi Italiani by Valentina De Luca. All right, so I'll move into question number 10. Do you want your collection to be bigger, smaller, or is it complete? I would have to say I want fewer redundancies, and ideally one day I would just like to have just a handful of decks where I feel I could answer almost anything. So my goal is more like about insight for both myself and my clients. But I think that my crutch, right? Like the gaps that I see in decks might actually just be my own development. Maybe I'm just not fully leaning into my own like psychic insight just yet. But at the same time, like it's hard to rely on just one system for everything. I feel like despite my absolute love for Lenormand, I feel that there's just certain questions it just doesn't do very well on, and maybe I just have to rely on my psychic insight in order to answer those particular questions. And I am planning to make a video in regards to that in the near future. So how often do I declutter? Pretty often. My practice evolves quite a bit, and as it does, like decks move in and out of my rotation quite quickly. I definitely have more decks to sell than decks that I actively use, and I did a recent decluttering of a lot of decks, and so I'm ready to sell because I just need the space. So yes, definitely decluttered quite often. Question 12, do you ever get envious of other people's collection? Not really. Not necessarily the collections themselves, but definitely the space people have. I live in a small apartment, like I mentioned before, so storage is always an issue for me. And yeah, you'll definitely find a lot of my decks everywhere. All right, so, and the last question, who on YouTube has the best collection videos? I tend to watch more like videos focused on personal practice, just people talking about their knowledge in regards to their decks, books in regards to tarot or witchcraft, and I purposely try not to watch a lot of collection videos because my collection will just keep on growing. Like I love listening to you guys and hearing your enthusiasm for certain decks, and it just, as soon as you guys do that, I'll just put it on my wish list, and then it's just, yeah, it's bad. All right, so those are all the questions. Thank you so much for watching this video and listening to me ramble. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening and take care. Okay, guys, so I totally forgot about question number 14, which is advice for future deck collectors. And so the biggest question for to ask, at least for me, is what do I want this deck to help me do, like before you purchase a deck. And that's especially important because not everyone uses tarot or any other deck the same way. Some people use it psychologically, meaning like you use it more for reflection, which I think is what's more predominant, at least in tarot too. And I tend to use decks a little bit more predictively, so I need them to actually answer like very concrete answers, right? Like sorry, questions, which is like before buying a deck, I would have to ask like, how is this going to help me diagnose a situation? Is it going to help me easily predict a situation? Is it going to help me clarify timing for a client? Or is this something that I just really visually love, right? That being said, I also don't fully agree with the idea that you should never really buy a deck until you've mastered the ones you already have. Some decks do go out of print, and once they're gone, they can become very expensive or really hard to obtain. So I think there's got to be a balance, right? I believe somebody, and I can't remember the name of this channel, but this person mentioned that they really love the Light Seers deck, and I think there's a particular version that goes close to the thousands. Like, wow, that's crazy. So I feel like over time, once you understand your reading style a little bit better, and that takes time, right? You naturally become more discerning. You start to recognize whether a deck fills a good role in your practice, or whether it's just kind of overlapping with something else that you already own. So I think that's like my biggest takeaway after doing this for quite some time. So yeah, I'm really bad at this. You could tell that I don't do show my decks type of videos, but that is it. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in, and hopefully this provided some sort of form of entertainment. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening.